Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm excited to talk with you in the middle of the day about pollination after dark. Over the last few years, we've learned a lot about how much other insects, including those that are active at night, are contributing to the pollination of our crops and wild plants, and also how much they're being affected by all the artificial lighting that we have around our houses, and our roads and our streets. So I hope that you'll learn a few new things in this presentation and then get motivated to turn off the lights at night and maybe venture outside to look at some of the insects that are active at that time. When you think about pollination, you probably picture this, right? Bees and butterflies and hummingbirds that are visiting flowers on a bright sunny day. You'll often see nursery plants labeled as butterfly or bee or hummingbird friendly, and gardens that are designed specifically to attract these types of pollinators. Other daytime pollinators include some kinds of flies, and wasps and beetles. And many pollinating insects are diurnal, which is a word meaning day active. But many pollinating insects are also active at night. If you look for images of pollinators, you're also going to see a lot of day active pollinators dominating these results, which makes a lot of sense because it is a lot easier to photograph a pollinator visiting a flower during daylight hours. But a growing body of research is changing perspectives on the importance of nocturnal pollinators, and we are starting to see how important moths and other nighttime visitors are for pollination of wild plant communities, as well as agricultural crops. There have been studies from Arkansas which found that nocturnal insect visitors, especially moths like this one, contribute significantly to the pollination of apples, and actually that pollination overnight was almost equal to that of daytime pollinators in terms of its contribution to fruit set in apples and the amount of seeds produced. There's also experimental evidence that shows that nighttime visitors contribute to blueberries and bramble crops, other fruit crops, observational evidence showing that nocturnal insects visit a wide range of other types of crop flowers. But these animals are really systematically understudied, which is partly because we, as humans, are daytime animals, and researchers don't always love sacrificing sleep to conduct this kind of fieldwork. So have to give major props at this point to all the researchers out there pursuing this. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about some of the other methods that folks are using so that they don't have to sacrifice their sleep to study nocturnal insects. So what do we know at this point about nighttime pollination? It's been observed in almost 2/3 of flowering plant orders, and it's more common in plants that are adapted to live in dry conditions, which is something we'll talk about a little bit. We're starting to see with this emergence of lots of research into this area that moths and other nighttime pollinators are really important in wild plant communities. And I think Carly or Amber might have a link to drop in the chat for this diagram here to show you where it came from. Moths are known to pollinate a diversity of plant families and species, which makes plant pollinator networks like this one quite a bit more complex than they appear during the day. So this is kind of an example of how nocturnal pollinators might contribute a lot of interactions and functions to a plant network. And this is just moths as an example. There are likely also flies and beetles and other types of insects contributing to pollination of all of these plants. But we also know that artificial lighting at night is a threat to these nocturnal pollinators. More than half of the United States experiences light pollution at night, and the area that's affected by light is growing every year. Artificial lighting can disrupt navigation of nocturnal insects as well as mating and other functions, and reduce flower visits and fruit set by nocturnal pollinators. So we'll talk more about this and solutions towards the end of our discussion. But let's dive into pollination on the night shift. So how or why does pollination happen at night? There are many pollinators that visit flowers during the day, obviously, and then there are some flowers that actually close themselves up and tuck in for bed at the time that darkness falls. There are also many flowers that stay open at night, or actually open exclusively at night. So if you like fun specific words, flowers opening or closing their petals at dusk in response to the onset of darkness is something called floral nyctinacty. This is some showy evening primrose in my colleague Caitlin's yard in New Mexico at night that opens up for business right at dusk. Evening primrose got its name specifically from its nyctinasty because it opens up in the evening. And actually, when I was a kid, I grew up in Maryland, and lots of folks on my street would walk up the street and gather around my neighbor's evening primrose to watch all those flowers popping open right at evening time. So if you have lots of daytime pollinators around, why would you bloom at night? Some reviews of all of the plant families and species have found that nocturnal pollination tends to be associated with species that have water loss adaptations. And so flowering at night could in some cases be an adaptation to water stress because flowering is this really water intensive process. Between a sunny day and a full moon, like we had last night, the light intensity differs by a factor of about 1,000,000. That's a big difference between a sunny day and a full moon night, and even more so between a new moon night. Nighttime usually means higher humidity, lower temperatures, and lower wind speeds, all of which are associated with less loss of water if you're a flower. So plants that are facing water stress could gain some kind of advantage by flowering at night when they're less likely to lose water through evapotranspiration. So they may, in this case, be able to produce flowers that are larger or offer more nectar or other reward for pollinators. So these flowers pictured here are a species of cactus found in the Sonoran Desert that put out these incredibly showy blooms for one night in June or July, and then look pretty unremarkable for the rest of the year. In other cases, it might be that they've evolved to benefit specifically from some nighttime pollinators. Although a lot of flowers are visited by both daytime and nighttime pollinators, some flowers have evolved features that are particularly attractive to nighttime pollinators. Because light is limited once the sun goes down, um, so unlike flowers that are appealing to daytime visitors with bright, flashy colors, flowers that are visited at night are often white or pale in color to reflect moonlight and are better able to be seen by insects flying around with fewer photons striking the flowers, right? Another common nocturnal flowering feature is strong fragrance. So some of these are very fragrant and their scent becomes more intense at night. As you might be able to imagine, as us as animals, following your nose is easier than following your eyes in the dark. So many daytime flowers are fragrant, but some nocturnal flowers will actually time the release of their fragrance for the evening to try and attract those types of pollinators. There are also some theories that nocturnal flowers, some at least, might be more likely to retain or produce heat that attracts pollinators in those lower temperatures at night. You know, most insects are ectothermic, meaning they don't produce their own heat, but they do usually need to stay above a certain temperature to be active. So flowers that are warmer are likely to be more attractive and help pollinators stay more active at night. Some plant species actually produce their own heat, which is called thermogenesis. It's more common for flowers to just retain heat that's captured from the sun, but this flower is an example of a beetle-pollinated species in the tropical plant family. And beetles that crawl into these thermogenic flowers stay warmer and more active through the night. So let's come back to the question of who are the nocturnal pollinators? I'd say there's really four main groups of nocturnal pollinators, totally not exclusive. There are many other insects that visit flowers at night, but these are the ones I'll just mention. Moths are really the most diverse and largest group of nocturnal pollinators. They're found all over the world where there are flowering plants. And the rest of these nocturnal pollinators tend to be more concentrated closer to the equator. I'm in the Northeast US. Up here, we have moths and beetles and some evening active bees. In the Southwest US, we also have bat pollinators at night. And it might surprise you to learn that there's actually quite a few bees, even though most bees are active in the daytime. About 1%, or about 250 species worldwide, actually are active in the evening into the night. Some species of beetles are also night pollinators. And a general review of nighttime pollination found flies and crickets, thrips, geckos, ants, and other species doing some nighttime pollination or having documented nighttime flower visits. But pollination isn't as simple as night and day. They're not neatly divided into day active and night active. Some of them fall into this twilight zone. So many pollinators are actually most active around dawn and dusk. And the term to describe this is crepuscular, which is Latin, crepusculum is Latin for the twilight zone. Crepuscular pollinators, which is a fun specific word also. Not all moths are nocturnal, not all bees are diurnal, because there's always exceptions. This is a 24-hour cycle, and they're going to find their niche out of that 24-hour cycle to work with. This here is a hawk moth or a hummingbird moth, which sometimes can be mistaken for an actual hummingbird. So like I said, most bees are day active, but there are a few bees, groups of bees that are crepuscular bees, active at dusk or dawn. And this slide shows two different species of Lasioglossum, which is a genus of sweat bees. The bee on the left is a day active species of sweat bee, Lasioglossum incompletum. It's a generalist visitor of many different kinds of flowers. And the bee on the right, Lasioglossum texanum, is a crepuscular species of sweat bee. Like many of the bees that start to come out at twilight, it's a specialist on flowers in the evening primrose family that start blooming at dusk. And I'm wondering what differences you notice about these two bees. I'm hoping you noticed the size difference between these structure on the tops of their heads. And if you thought that bees only have two eyes, I think again, these three round things on the tops of bees' heads are what are called simple eyes or ocelli. They take in light and they help bees orient relative to the sun. So crepuscular bees, like the one on the right, have larger eyes and larger simple eyes that help take in more light at that time when they're active. Crepuscular bees like this one tend to be more common in warmer places and also more arid places where dusk isn't bringing the threat of really cold temperatures. But we do have crepuscular bees up in the Northeast as well, including the squash bee, which some of you may be familiar with. That's commonly active at dawn and dusk, and they tend to come out 1 to 2 hours earlier in the morning than other squash pollinators like bumblebees, which takes full advantage of those flowers resources. And I don't know if you listened to the Bug Banter podcast about this, but if you did, you would have heard when I was a senior in college, I tried to do my thesis on squash bees and squash pollinators in general. But that was a mistake because my college senior sleep schedule did not match up with bees that come out first thing in the morning. So we have bees that fly at dawn, bees that fly at dusk in dim light, but are there truly nocturnal bees? Yes, there are. There are a few different groups of bees that have independently evolved adaptations, allowing them to fly and visit flowers even on moonlit nights past dusk and dawn. And I thought it was kind of fun that I was giving this talk the day after the full moon, which was good timing. So there's one species that's actually been seen flying on moonless nights, which is the large carpenter bee, the photo on top, native to Southeast Asia. It doesn't typically fly in total darkness, but it is quite active on nights when the moon is out. And you can see, if you look at the top of its head, you can see that simple eye is really quite large. The bee on the bottom here is the nocturnal sweat bee, Megaloptogenalis, which is a large sweat bee that lives in hollowed out stems in the rainforest understory. So it's navigating through this dense understory of the rainforest at night. And its compound eyes are almost 30 times more sensitive to light than worker honeybees, which are active in the daytime. It also has specialized neurons that help them process that really limited amount of spatial information they're getting from the sun or from the photons of light hitting their eyes. So the example that I like to use with this bee is if you're watching a movie and you have a character like the FBI is looking at camera footage and they say, stop, zoom in there and enhance, make it clearer. And somehow magically the image processing is capable of rendering tons of detail. That's kind of how nocturnal bees' brains are working. They're taking this tiny amount of light and they're processing it into a better rendering of spatial information. Beetle pollination is also understudied relative to bees and even to moths. Some beetle pollination definitely happens during the day, but many beetle species are also active at night and may be visiting flowers. So this is wild ginger, which is a native species up here in New England. And that's an example of a fly and beetle pollinated flower. These flowers are very inconspicuous at the base of the plant and they smell like carrion. So they stay open day and night and they'll attract flies and beetles. But moths are really major players in nocturnal pollination. So I'm going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into moths because they're so important in these plant pollinator networks and they're so abundant and diverse across the world. So what do they look like? What's their life history? What role are they playing in our ecosystems? And then I'm going to talk about some interesting moth species. Moths are extremely abundant and diverse with over 160,000 species around the world. That's compared to about 17,000 species of butterflies. So there's almost 10 moth species for every one species of butterfly. And we only have about 20,000 species of bees worldwide. So moths are really incredibly diverse relative to other pollinators. Not all moths are pollinators, not all moths are active at night. But just to give you some numbers, we have about 11,000 species of moths here in the United States. So first things first, how do you tell a butterfly apart from a moth? They both belong to the same order, Lepidoptera, so they are quite similar and can be confused. So this is what I would say is probably a typical moth and a typical butterfly, right? The butterfly is very flashy and colorful. This moth is camouflaged and discreet. But there are trickier examples. This is a drab insect and a flashy insect. So which one is the moth? The easiest way to tell is the antennae. So the butterfly is on the left. At the end of its antennae, it has a knob shape. This is a clubbed antennae. And at the moth is on the right, and its antennae ends in a point. Moths can also have feathery antennae, like male moths often have these very feathery antennae to pick up the scent of the females. So looking at this example again, the swallowtail has clubbed antennae, and the moth is hiding their antennae. So here's an example of that feathery antennae in a male. These are covered in pheromone receptors called sensilla that help them detect and locate and track down females by the trail of pheromones that those females are releasing. So that's adults, but what about caterpillars? These are maybe a couple caterpillars you might be familiar with. These are tent caterpillar moths and a monarch butterfly in their larval stage on the right. So the moths in this instance are quite hairy, which is often seen in moth caterpillars, but not in butterfly caterpillars. Hairs on moths can cause irritation. So to be safe, I wouldn't recommend handling hairy caterpillars. You probably already know that. Now, both of these are smooth and there's no hair to go on. In this case, the moth is on the left and the butterfly is on the right. So unfortunately, there's sometimes not an obvious difference in some butterfly and moth caterpillars. This is on the left, a member of sphinx moths. It is a sphinx moth that have hornworm caterpillars. So I think the general indicator is if it's fuzzy or hairy, that it's likely a moth because there's no hairy butterfly larvae. But sometimes it can be a little trickier in the immature stage. So to bring up moth diversity again, I just wanted to show you this kind of incredible variety in different shapes of moths. This is a silhouette guide from bugguide.net that narrows down most moth families by shape. So to give you an idea of the range, the largest moth in the world is the Hercules moth, which has a wingspan of about 11 inches. The smallest are in the genus Stigmella, which have wingspans around 3 millimeters. So pretty big size difference. There are some moths that are colorful. I'll show you some later on, but most of these species are active during the day. Many moths are cryptic, which is another word for camouflaged. And I wanted to mention a couple of them. One on the left is the bird dropping moth for obvious reasons. And the one on the right is the peppered moth, which spends its day resting against tree trunks, going unnoticed by potential predators. And that moth has a particularly neat evolution story because it evolved rapidly to get darker during the Industrial Revolution in England when soot and smoke were darkening the bark of its host trees. And so it now mirrors the image of the soot-darkened trees in those industrial areas of England during the Industrial Revolution. Like butterflies and some other insects, moths undergo complete metamorphosis, which means their development includes multiple life stages. The first being an egg laid on a host plant for the next stage to eat. That egg hatches into a larva or caterpillar. The caterpillar goes through multiple instars where the larva stage grows and sheds its skin, and then the larva spins a cocoon for its pupal stage. They can stay in that pupal stage for a long time until the right conditions cue their emergence out of the cocoon. And then finally, the moth has reached its last life stage where they are an adult and they find a mate, lay more eggs, and start the process over again. The adult life stage is actually often the shortest, with some species only living about 2 days, just really focused on finding a mate and laying eggs. And they lack mouth parts in some of these species because the adult is only really out to do one thing, not to eat, but to reproduce. Others can live up to 3 months or more as an adult and spend that time pollinating flowers. So now that we know what moths look like, let's switch gears and let's talk about behavior. One thing we're probably all familiar with is the moth's affinity for all things light. We've all seen moths attracted to lighting. So why are they obsessed with light? The leading theory is that they travel by something called transverse orientation, which they've evolved to migrate and find food by determining their location by moonlight, staying on course by keeping a fixed angle with the moon to stay in a straight line. Same way sailors would have navigated hundreds of years ago, or using the North Star. The sudden appearance of artificial lighting after thousands of years of evolving to travel by moonlight didn't give moths enough time to adapt. So this disrupts their ability to navigate, and they fly straight. They end up running into the lights. So moths have become the butt of a lot of internet jokes, like this one. Some migrate north and south. There are migratory moths. Some migrate up and down in elevation. The moon is really an important reference point for traveling moths. And an interesting species of migrating moth is the silver Y moth, which is found in Europe, also a resident in northern Africa. Some migrate as far north as Finland from Africa. So this tiny moth travels by hitching a ride on fast, high altitude air currents that mostly occur at night. And one study actually looked at how they make it to their seasonal breeding grounds using this travel method. They actually test the air current and only hitch a ride when the wind is blowing in the correct direction, suggesting they actually, in addition to the transverse orientation, have a directional internal geomagnetic compass when they're airborne, which is pretty incredible. There's a lot left to learn just by looking at the biology of individual species. So instead of a nose, like I mentioned, moths have antennae that they can use to sense smells. This is used to locate flowers to nectar on. It's used to locate host plants to lay their eggs on. And it's also used to locate mates to reproduce with in the dark. So males typically have these larger, more feathery antennae. The female moths emit pheromones, which the males are able to sense. And they must sense them in order to find that mate. Most adult moths are generalists, visiting many of the same plants that are visited during the day by bees. Many carry pollen right on their underbellies, as well as on their wings, and they can contribute to the pollination of a variety of fruits and vegetables. There was a study of agricultural fields in England that came out recently looking at hundreds of moths and that sampled and analyzed the DNA of pollen from their underbellies and proboscis to figure out what plants they had been foraging on. And in the area they were studying, this nocturnal pollen transport network had over 100 moth species and dozens of plant species, including some that are visited frequently by daytime pollinators, and then some that are really only visited at night, this subset of plants that really was only visited by moths. So this is just a kind of a small peek into what's happening. But just to look at the scientific research overall, there are 22 studies on bees for every one study that's been done looking at moths. So I think we have a lot left to learn. And I think I mentioned at the beginning, researchers are starting to tease out methods for looking at nighttime pollinators without having to sacrifice their sleep. So there was a recent study that came out looking at red clover pollination, and they actually used time-lapse night cameras to capture nocturnal flower visits, finding in the end that moths contributed 34% of total flower visits. So, and the other large percent was contributed by bumblebees during the daytime. But so for red clover and for many other species, we think moths have really been systematically undercounted in their contributions to what they're providing in pollination to wild plants and crops. Another recent study looked at bramble flowers or blackberries and found that moths are pretty efficient pollinators of those as well. These study authors did sacrifice sleep. They experimentally bagged clusters of flowers and left them open only during the day or only at night. They found that more insects visited flowers during the day, but nighttime pollinators actually moved more pollen per visit, which is interesting. If you think about it, it could make sense that moths are pretty good pollinators of some of these open flowers because some moths are really quite fluffy and some actually exhibit a vibrating behavior, kind of like buzz pollination that bees use to get more pollen out of flowers. This is a photo of an armyworm moth that vibrates her wings while visiting an apple flower at night. This is from the researchers at University of Arkansas that were looking at apple pollination. So this is the behavior that she's using to stay warm while moving around at night, but it's acting like buzz pollination, which is really pretty cool and interesting. Fall armyworm moths, you might recognize that name because they can be pests of some crops, as well as turfgrass as caterpillars, but then they pollinate other crops as adults. So looking at nighttime pollination might actually help us reframe how we think about some of these species and what they're contributing to the ecosystem. Moths in particular might be important for maintaining gene flow, like genetic diversity of plants across long distances and landscapes. Female bees are what we call central place foragers. They build a nest and then they're just foraging on plants right around that nest. Smaller bees might only be traveling a few hundred meters from their nest site. Larger bees might travel a couple of miles, but either way, they're not moving pollen beyond a pretty local location from their nest site. Moths, on the other hand, especially these migratory moths, aren't tied to a nest site, and they might be traveling long distances, potentially moving pollen between quite distant plant populations. Under the right conditions, migratory moths could fly a few hundred kilometers in a single night. This is a cabbage looper moth on the right here, which clocked a maximum flight distance in a single flight for about 200 kilometers. So one night, 200 kilometers. These might be really important for maintaining genetic diversity of plant populations across their whole range. So let's talk about some of the specialized relationships that we know about for like plant and bee relationships that you might know about, like squash bees. This is a yucca moth in a yucca flower, and these moths exclusively pollinate plants in the yucca genus. Yuccas don't create nectar, and other pollinators have relatively little reason to visit them. This yucca moth only lives as an adult for 2 days. It's one of those moths that doesn't have mouth parts as an adult because it doesn't live very long. So after it mates inside a yucca flower, the female purposefully gathers pollen from the flower and then flies to the yucca plant. The female lays a few eggs on the ovary of a flower, then takes that pollen she carried with her and deposits it on the stigma of the flower. So most moths in general are what we call incidental pollinators. They're accidental pollinators. They get covered in pollen while they're looking for nectar. But in this case, the yucca moth is a very intentional pollinator. She brings the pollen in, lays the eggs in the flower, and that way her babies will have yucca fruit to eat, and the yucca is able to produce seeds. So this is a specialized plant pollinator relationship between a moth and a plant. This is another fun one. This is a giant hawk moth endemic to Madagascar, which was discovered in 1882, but its existence was predicted 20 years earlier by Charles Darwin, he was sitting in his London office looking at a Star of Bethlehem orchid that was sent in from Madagascar by a colleague, which has a foot-long nectar spur with the nectar pooled only at the very bottom of the nectar spur. And Darwin wrote in a letter to a friend, "Good heavens, what insect can suck this plant?" So Darwin predicted that the scientists would one day discover the orchid's co-evolutionary partner, an insect with a foot-long proboscis. And then decades later, they located this hawk moth, which lent support to Darwin's theory of co-evolution between plants and pollinators. So just as we're just starting to better understand the contribution of nighttime pollinators, increasingly, there's also research looking into the negative effects and impacts of light pollution and artificial lighting at night on pollinator activity at night and the ability of plants to reproduce. So there was a study from Switzerland that looked at the pollination of a species of thistle that they grew with and without artificial lighting. So they placed these street lamps over the plots of cabbage thistle that had never been exposed to artificial light at night. And they used night vision goggles to observe and capture pollinators and found that the plots where they moved these mobile street lamps and added artificial light, they saw 62% fewer visits from insects than plots that were situated in darkness. And the artificially lit plants also saw 29% fewer pollinating species and produced significantly fewer fruits than those that were in darkness. So even though daytime pollinators were usually more numerous than the nighttime pollinators, they weren't able to make up the difference in lost pollination from nocturnal pollinators of the plants that were kept under artificial lighting. So these plants were not able to reproduce as well when they were under light pollution. It doesn't just only affect moths, it also disrupts other nocturnal pollinators. So what's the solution? How do we work on conserving nocturnal pollinators? There are some key actions that we can take, some of which fit very well with what you are likely already doing if you are a wildlife gardener, providing habitat, food, and shelter, but also moving beyond that to think about how can we reduce artificial lighting around our houses and communities, avoid pesticides, especially in and around insect habitat, and then talk to your friends and neighbors and communities to talk about the love of moths and other nighttime insects and how important they are. So we can, as gardeners, take a variety of steps, many of which you're likely already taking. You already probably have dozens, if not hundreds, of night active insects in your yards or around your community. So general rules of thumb for habitat are about the same as they are for daytime pollinators. Increase native plantings, decrease hard surfaces, and plant a diversity of different kinds of native plants to attract a diversity of native insects. That's all pretty straightforward. Also, do more by doing less. Less tidy yards are generally better for insects. So one of the easiest ways to make gardens better for moths is just to stop working so hard. Moths and caterpillars need fallen leaves, old stems, plant debris, help them hide from predators, and to provide good shelter and overwintering sites. And it's also helpful to delay cutting back old plants until the spring rather than doing it in the fall, and just generally be less tidy. So I think Carly and Amber have the nesting and overwintering guidance from Xerces that we can share. We have lots of other resources available on this as well. So if you want your garden to look tidy in the summer, just try taking some of the material if you're cutting it back in early spring and leave it in the back of borders or other places out of sight. But I would say in general, just not working quite so hard, doing more by doing less, helps with gardening for wildlife and for nocturnal pollinators. So you can give yourself a bit of a pat on the back for doing more with less. Then we can go beyond what we might already be doing to garden for wildlife, that are things that are more specific for nighttime pollinators, which is really addressing artificial lighting. Artificial light at night is a significant threat to nocturnal pollinators because it disrupts their natural behaviors, their ability to navigate, and then ultimately their ability to mate and reproduce, which are important when you're thinking about population growth or decline. Much of the artificial light around us at night actually is not needed if we think about it, especially when we as day active animals are asleep. So the first step that I would recommend is just going outside at night and observing your space, trying to take the insect perspective, remembering that these insects are many times more sensitive to tiny differences in light than we are as diurnal animals. So you go outside at night, what light do you see? Do you see a splash of light coming out of the windows of your house onto your garden? Do you or your neighbors have party lighting over the patio or vanity lighting on the exterior of your house? Is there an obvious street light or floodlight? What about sky glow from your city or a nearby town? So this is an important exercise just for giving a starting point of looking at the light pollution in your local environment. The best way to protect moths and other nocturnal insects from light pollution is to reduce artificial light in both space and time. It's basically turn off the lights. Research on fireflies and glowworms suggests that it's actually light intensity, just how much light is present, not color temperature. That's the main driver of disruption in mate finding. So there are some suggestions to change, the light spectrum of artificial lighting from cold to warm, install red LEDs or red gel filters over existing lights. So that can be a good step for reducing some disruption to insects, as well as our mammal circadian rhythms as we're trying to sleep at night. But it's not the full solution for every insect. I'd say in general, we need to reduce the intensity of light in the evening and at night, which does mean turning lights off. So there's usually steps for our own house or apartment that we can do to reduce light pollution. That can include on the inside, putting up curtains that you keep closed at night to keep light from leaving the house and moving out into the garden. So and then also on the outside lighting, putting motion detectors or timers on it. So just ask yourself when it comes to lighting, does the lighting have a clear purpose? Is it needed? Is it targeted? There's some principles of responsible outdoor lighting from Dark Sky International that can help think through this. So in my experience, there's a lot of different kinds of light that you can keep off most of the time using a motion detector for when you want light, whether that's being able to move from your driveway into your house or from the feeling of safety that comes from light turning on when there's motion outside. The second best option behind that would be things like dimming, hooding, and shielding outdoor lighting. And again, Dark Sky has really great resources on what that looks like. The added benefit of reducing artificial lighting and light pollution, besides conserving insects, is the ability to see the stars at night. So there would be a great secondary benefit to many of us from working both at the individual level and the community level on this. At that community and state level, there is really important work to be done to reduce lighting impacts on insects and other wildlife, including migratory birds. There's really a nexus here between insects and birds. Most migratory birds fly at night: orioles, thrushes, sparrows, warblers, vireos, and more. And overly lit structures and landscapes can tempt migrating birds into fatal collisions with buildings. So there are estimates that up to 1 billion birds are killed by building collisions every year, just in the United States. On a per building basis, most of this is happening with skyscrapers and other large buildings, but individual residences cumulatively kill the most birds. So this is something, overuse of outdoor lighting at night is something we could be working on individually and in community, including better lighting standards for street lighting, requirements for commercial buildings to keep their indoor lighting on a timer, and restrictions on vanity outdoor lighting. This can happen at the state level. This is the logo for Lights Out Connecticut, which is an initiative from Connecticut Audubon. Connecticut last year passed legislation to require state-owned buildings to turn off non-essential outdoor lighting between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. to protect migratory birds during their migration. There's a variety of states that have statewide lights out programs, and then also some cities with similar programs, including Boston, Chicago, New York, and DC. In our own yards, we are sometimes trying to garden for wildlife in places that have a lot of outdoor lighting that we don't control. So if you're tuning into this from a city, you can also work to create dark zones, right? You don't have control over the street light, but what can you do to protect your garden from that light? Thinking about it almost like a pollutant, right? How can you protect your garden? You could plant trees and shrubs to try and block or absorb artificial lighting from your neighbors or from a street light, kind of like you might plant dense vegetation as a drift barrier to protect your pollinator garden from your neighbor's pesticide applications. So creating darker spaces with vegetation that help absorb light could create some darker zones, dark enough for nocturnal insects to navigate. So one thing to think about if you have lighting that you can't control around you. Another important step in managing spaces for pollinators, daytime or nighttime pollinators, is limiting pesticide exposure. So if we're planting attractive plantings for pollinators, we also want to be avoiding pesticide use in our yards and garden, as many of these pesticides available for home and garden use are harmful to moths, fireflies, other nocturnal insects. This includes backyard barrier treatments, right, for mosquito or tick control, as well as granular treatments for grub control in lawns. So what we don't want to do is to build in all of these attractive spaces for these insects and then create an accidental trap where we've attracted them in, provided them with food, and then are accidentally harming them with pesticide applications. I'd say in general, much larger point, part of managing gardens for wildlife, for moths, butterflies, bees, birds, is shifting expectations about what it looks like, what the aesthetics could be. So if you are gardening for wildlife and you're planting native plants, signs of plant damage from insects really mean that you're doing it right. The insects are using your garden. One of the things that can really help with this, it helps me, is using smartphone apps or learning to recognize common beneficial insects and helping, figuring out what's there, just observing it can be really helpful for accepting what kind of damage your plants might be undergoing. The other thing to recognize is that moderate damage to a lot of these native plants is something that they're adapted to and they'll grow right back out of. Suddenly you'll realize when you start to be observant how many different kinds of things are there and what kind of insects your garden is really supporting. So before I wrap up, I just wanted to specifically mention bug zappers, which I really can't believe are still sold in stores. So bug zappers are widely available despite overwhelming research just demonstrating that they're useless for controlling pests like mosquitoes. So there was research that was done at the University of Florida looking at one bug zapper in one test night. It killed 10,000 insects, of which only 8 were mosquitoes. Research from the 1990s estimated that 4 million bug zappers at that time were in use across the United States, operating for an average of 40 nights a year, killing an estimated 71 billion harmless or beneficial insects like moths. So I would say bug zappers are something that might be okay for indoor use, but I would not use them outdoors if you are gardening for wildlife. All right, so I only have a few slides left here. I want to kind of wrap up by saying, it's clear nocturnal pollinators play important roles in plant communities, natural ecosystems, as well as agricultural systems. We have a ton more that we want to learn about the details of their relationships with plants, the different ways they interact with different kinds of plant species, what they need for their habitat, and how we can best support them. But I hope that I've at least whetted your interest for learning more right with me. If you are interested in observing night flying moths close up, you can go out and try and look at them on flowers, or there are a couple methods that you can use to bring them right to you. If you're trying to figure out, what do I have in my backyard? There's 2 different things you could do. You could point light into a bucket or onto a sheet. So if you're using the bucket, you can put cardboard egg cartons opened up inside the bucket so that moths that fly in there have little nooks and crannies to hide and rest. And then when you open up the bucket, you should have lots of moths to look at. With the sheet method, you can hang a white sheet outside away from other sources of artificial light on a windless evening, and then point a bright flashlight or other kind of light source to illuminate it. Summer is the best time for viewing the greatest diversity of moths. And then you bring a hand lens or a camera to document what moths come to your sheet. So if you take photos, regardless of what method you're using, you can upload them to something like iNaturalist for help with identification, and then help document those species being present in your area. So, and the other nice thing is if you don't succeed with the sheet, it doubles as a fun shadow puppet set. This was my colleague Caitlin in New Mexico. Didn't have much luck with her moth observations at night, but she did have a great shadow puppet activity with her dog Opal. Oh, did I put that up? Yeah, okay. There's a lot of different online guides that can help with moth identification. Some of the ones that you might want to look at are bugguide.net, which has that silhouette key to major moth families, butterfliesandmoths.org, and then iNaturalist, which is also a smartphone app as well as a website. Those are all good sources of ID help and information. So I'll just end by saying there are really some beautiful insects that are out at night, as well as the ones that are not so conspicuous. This is a rosy maple moth. Some of you might be familiar with it. As a caterpillar, it's pretty inconspicuous. It's green. It feeds on the leaves of a variety of different maple trees. And as an adult, it has this incredible mix of colors. So it starts its activity in the daytime, in the late afternoon as an adult, but then it mates and it lays eggs at night. It might only mate once per season, depending on your latitude. So if you're in northern areas of the rosy maple moth, it's only going to mate once in the season, doesn't have mouth parts. It's just doing its thing for a couple of days. And this is a species that's attracted to light. If you see it at your window or your porch light, it's not mating, it's not reproducing. So let's all do our part to conserve these amazing insects, and let's remember to turn out our lights. Many thanks to the supporters of Xerces that make this type of work possible. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you so much, Emily. I definitely learned a lot there, and I loved all the beautiful photos. There's some really great nocturnal insects out there that I didn't know about. And thank you everybody for your questions. We have a lot of really good questions coming in through the Q&A. We will do our best to get through all of them. But just one last little plug here, please post comments in the chat feature and save the Q&A for questions. Just helps us keep track so that we can try and make sure to answer them all. So I'm going to try and bounce around between different kinds of pollinators so we don't focus on one, favor one over the other. First up, just a clarifying question about bat pollination. You mentioned that there were bat pollinators in the Southwest, but one of our guests wants to know if there are any bat pollinators in the Midwest as well, and I suspect maybe also elsewhere.
I don't believe there are bat pollinators in the Midwest. The bats that I'm thinking of in the Southwest are fruit bats, and they are out pollinating cactuses and other species. Like, these are vertebrates, and I work at an invertebrate conservation group, so I'll say I'm less familiar with what bats are up to. But I would, if you're interested in that, I know my colleague Caitlin, who's based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, has also given similar presentations, some of which may be online, where she talks a little bit more about bat pollination.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Now, a moth question. Talked about this a little bit, I think, when going over some plants, but Linda would like to know, what are the best plants? Maybe a couple off the top of your head, though again, not your area of the country, but what are the best plants for moths, especially natives in the Midwest?
Yeah, so if you think about what plants might be visited by moths, they visit all kinds of different species. From the early spring, moths are maybe visiting trees and shrubs. Through the middle of the summer, things like rubus, so that would be your bramble plants that have that kind of pale open flower, the Rosaceae, apples and other species that have those open flowers. But again, this is one where we have a lot more to learn about which species host the most diversity of nighttime pollinators. So the best that I can do at this point is just say, keep planting native plants and try and get a diversity of families and species in your yard. The more diversity you have, the more insects you're going to be attracting in the daytime and at night.
Yeah, excellent advice. Keeping with a similar theme here about garden choices, Kate says, I love the idea of a messy insect pollinator friendly garden and yard, but curious how to balance this with the fireproofing or maybe fire mitigation measures some of us have to do in wildfire zones. Any advice?
Yeah, great point. That's definitely a consideration in much of the arid West. And there are fire smart landscaping guidelines that you can use that designate different zones around your house for where you want to keep it, neat, tidy, and fire safe. And then as you move out farther from your house, you can look at being more messy and introducing more sort of taller plantings. So I want to say there's, fire smart landscaping for Marin County that I've seen, but there's probably other resources to look for um, on what sort of zones you should designate and how far out from your house you could look at being more messy for insects.
Thank you. Okay, just got another one that is also related, so we'll just keep in the same lane right now. Besides flowering plants, how relevant are native grasses for moths?
Native grasses for moths?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. I would need to look into it. I know there are butterfly species that use grasses as their host plants, and there are likely moth species that also use grasses as their host plants as caterpillars. As adults, those are unlikely to be providing, more than shelter. They're probably not food resources for more than a caterpillar, but some native grasses may be host plants for moths. I would just have to look into it. I know they are for some skipper butterflies.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So many great questions coming in, trying to keep them all organized. Switching to some lighting questions, which I know you covered in your talk a little bit, but someone wants to know if amber light serves as well as red. They just ordered a bunch of amber bulbs for the minimal outside light on their house and want to make sure that they're helping pollinators, not harming them.
Right. Yeah. So I think amber lighting is going to be less disruptive to mammals. It's going to be less disruptive to some kinds of insects. But I think for the ones that are really light sensitive, something like fireflies, it's more about intensity than it is about color spectrum. So the best you could do would be the red lighting if you have to have a light out. But yeah, I think you'll benefit some suite of nighttime pollinators by switching to an amber light if you have to have that light there. So that is a step to take. The next best, it's really the next best option behind turning a light off would be switching to a warmer color spectrum and then dimming, hooding, and shielding and trying to reduce the amount of light that's making it out into the dark zones where those insects are flying.
Yeah, I see it. There's a couple questions related to this, and I know some folks have requirements, like in HOAs, for example, that they're required to have a source of lighting. So just helping to make the best choices possible.
Right. I think there's a whole other conversation we could have about how we can change some of our HOA bylaws and restrictions to better support gardening for wildlife in general.
Definitely. We'll have to
tough
save
when
that.
tough when those are still in place.
Mm-hmm. Still related to lighting now, maybe you can speak to, oops, sorry, when more questions come in, it jumps. How does light pollution affect predation of nocturnal pollinators? Can you speak to that?
Oh yeah, I meant to mention that on the slide about when I introduced artificial lighting disruption, but light pollution can increase predation of some of our nocturnal pollinators. So there are some predators for whom having that additional light source may make it easier for them to find their prey, making it, more difficult to survive if you're a moth out at night. So yes, there's research showing that light pollution can increase predation of some of those species.
Yeah, that would make sense, I think. Someone else would like to know if there is a link we can provide for any instructions on those light in a bucket or lighting with a white sheet activities.
Yeah, I didn't provide a link to you guys, but if you search moth trap, light moth trap online, there are lots of instructions. It's pretty simple. You really just direct the light source into the bucket and then put an egg carton on the inside. It's very simple.
Thanks. Yeah, if we have a chance to find that, we will share it in the chat with everybody. If not, we can try and share it later. And that also reminds me, we have some other questions about all of the research papers you shared. And I just want to let everyone know that we will share links to all of those because I know there's a lot and you want to pay attention. We will share a link to those when we post this webinar to YouTube, so don't worry. Okay, let's see. I had a question here. I'm going to switch to bees now. Deborah wanted to know, or wanted to hear more about skunk cabbage is sometimes referred to as a sauna for early spring bees. Does that work the same as some of those other plants you were talking about earlier in the presentation?
Yeah, so skunk cabbage is definitely an example of a thermogenic species. It comes out very early in the year, sometimes actually melts its way through snow when it comes out in the Northeast. So I don't know that skunk cabbage is bee pollinated. I want to say it may be beetle pollinated, but it is definitely an example that you might be more familiar with of a thermogenic plant, unlike the ones that I showed from tropical rainforest.
Thanks for that. All right. Similarly, still on bees, Valerie's been told that squash bees sleep in the squash blossoms, but they think it sounds more like they are taking advantage of their own private pollen source overnight. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so if you see bees sleeping in a squash blossom, it's more than likely the male squash bees that are hanging out. This is probably what I should have done as a college senior, you know, trying to watch squash pollinators. I should have just camped out right next to the squash blossoms and watch the females come out in the morning. But what those males do is they sleep overnight in the flowers and then they're there ready to pounce when the female arrives first thing in the morning. So they get woken up when the female comes in to visit the flower for pollen in the morning. So they do have a sort of ready to go nectar source right there, but they're mostly just camping out because that female is so active very early in the daytime.
Okay. I think you may have gone over this one a little bit, but switching gears over to beetles now. Can you give some examples of plants that may be pollinated at night by beetles?
Yeah, so I think the ones that I gave examples of were those more like obvious beetle pollinated ones that smell like carrion or obviously trying to attract flies and beetles. Some of the ones you might not think about are things like goldenrods. You know, you have the goldenrod soldier beetle that's got its flowers open all the time, and those beetles are all over those flowers. I would imagine that those beetles are carrying pollen around from flower to flower of goldenrods. There are other similar examples of soldier beetles that are on other types of other species. So those open species where the beetle's coming in, landing, looking for some nectar or, you know, hanging out, those might just be accidentally pollinated by them, but the plant has learned to take advantage of it, right?
Yes, through many, many years of evolution. Similarly, you know, we've talked a lot about some native plants and that have evolved with these relationships with nocturnal pollinators. But what are examples of night pollination likely to happen in, let's say, a vegetable garden?
Yeah, so if you have, let's take the example, I mean, I said squash, but if you have caneberries, like blackberries, raspberries, that kind of thing, those are clearly aided by moth pollination. Most likely brassicas are also highly visited by moths at night. That, you know, those are they're things that you might not necessarily want to have, you know, you might not have let them go to bolt. But if you're trying to produce seeds, and I think we have more to learn about, you know, what other species might be visited. I think tomatoes are pretty clearly bumblebee pollinated, other buzz pollinated, but it's possible that moths are also visiting them. But the ones that I know about for sure would be things like your blackberries and raspberries, your probably cucumbers, watermelon, squash, that kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of the plants in those families. Okay, switching gears entirely now, some pesticide questions. Allison wants to know if there's research on mosquito abatement programs that use truck-based aerial spraying of synthetic pyrethroids for whole communities and the impact of non-mosquito insects.
Yeah.
Chemical companies, oh, sorry, just making sure I got the whole question. Chemical companies and the CDC say it's not going to hurt pollinators, but anecdotal evidence in their yard last year leads them to believe that this is incorrect.
Yeah, those definitely have impacts on other species of insects. So most typically what your local vector control district, if you've got a mosquito truck going out, would be spraying something like nailed or like permethrin, some kind of synthetic pyrethroid, or in some cases organophosphate insecticide, which are very broad spectrum and can have impacts on a lot of other species besides the target mosquito. And those clearly have impacts on many other kinds of beneficial insects, pollinators, beetles, flies, other things that are out in those areas where they're being treated. So we do have resources on our website for ecologically sound mosquito management, including how you can encourage your community to move towards a more integrated pest management approach to managing mosquitoes. It does get tricky when there's a public health threat, whether it's West Nile or Zika or some other, mosquito-borne illness that's of concern. So, but there are methods that communities can take to reduce sources of mosquito breeding, increase diversity of predators in wetlands that help tackle those mosquito populations before they reach concerning levels, and reduce use of adulticides that can affect other insects.
Thank you. Yes, we'll try to post links to some of those resources in the chat for everybody. Related, there's some questions about using garlic oil or cedar oil sprays rather than permethrin. Are those safer for insects in general?
Those are definitely less harmful to other insects. They can be repellent, they can have some level of toxicity, but they break down more quickly and they tend to have less toxicity. The synthetic pyrethroids, which are the most common ones used for sort of backyard mosquito or tick treatments, those have active ingredients that are things like permethrin, deltamethrin, lambda-cyhalothrin. I don't have all the product names in front of me, but those tend to be quite toxic and more persistent than the natural oils.
All right, I love this question. Where do pollinators sleep? And maybe it's a twofold question for diurnal or nocturnal pollinators.
Yeah, so they do sleep. And oftentimes it's resting on vegetation. Sometimes in the flowers, like in the case of squash bees, sometimes, just sort of tucked away in leaf litter. So it depends on the species, but they are, inactive. Bees are going to be back in their nests. Female bees are going to be back in their nests. So if you see male bees, if you see bees sleeping on flowers at night, it's more likely to be a male bee because the female's gone back into her nest. And yeah, they're very, moths would be inactive during the daytime on, a tree or in leaf litter or some other sort of unobtrusive place where they're not going to get preyed upon during the daytime before they're active at night.
I at least personally love finding a bee early in the morning sleeping in a flower. It's always so fun. All right. What about if you can speak to how invasive insect species may be affecting nocturnal pollinators?
Oh, that's a tough question. An interesting one too. I think in general, invasive plants and invasive insect species add disruption into these kinds of pollination networks, whether it's out competing a preferred resource or a host plant. So if you have invasive plants or invasive insects that are taking the resources from a preferred plant and not allowing it to provide those resources to a native insect, or not allowing a native plant to continue reproducing in its environment. Those are the kinds of disruption that invasion introduce, as well as, bringing diseases and pathogens with them. So I couldn't say in general, or even necessarily specifically how it's affecting nocturnal pollination, but it's just adding disruption to those networks.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. I'm not exactly sure where this came in the presentation, but hopefully you remember. Someone wanted to know what you meant by vertical migration.
I think probably what I meant was up and down elevational gradients. So some
Mhm.
migration happens, you know, up and down an elevational gradient, like on a mountain range. Um, that's probably what I meant more than vertical migration.
Okay, good to know. And then a couple questions regarding some community science projects, both a initiative called Caterpillar Count, and then I believe there's one in here also for, let me find it here, Montana Moth Project. Are you familiar with these, and do you know if other states have any kind of projects to help with nocturnal insect monitoring?
That is a great question. I'm not familiar with them, but I will have to look into it. And I would love to add that kind of information into this talk if I give it again in the future. I was mostly looking at, you know, there's iNaturalist type projects. So within that app, there are community-led projects that are trying to get more information about different kinds of insects or species. So that's why I directed folks there. But I'll have to look up those two and look into if there's other community science efforts. I'm always going to be a supporter and proponent of participation in those types of projects. They're so useful.
Definitely are. And fun to participate in. All right, then Cynthia wants to know if hummingbird feeders are safe for bees and moths, and I guess maybe a second part of if nocturnal insects are using them.
That's an interesting question. I would imagine that some nocturnal insects would be attracted to hummingbird feeders. I think the main concern with those types of feeders is one, that they're simple sugars, right? So that they're not providing those kinds of secondary compounds that nectar provides. The best source of resource for an insect is going to be a plant that provides that nectar, because it has these other compounds that help them with their gut function and their immune health and all of this, all of these other functions in their bodies. The other thing I could think about is if they're not regularly cleaned, they might be a source of, you know, pathogens or things like that. If lots of different kinds of insects are visiting them and they're not cleaned out frequently. So, but I don't know specifically of examples of that. It's just the two things that come to mind.
Thank you for that. Okay, on bees, just a fun question here. Do you have a favorite bee, whether nocturnal or diurnal?
I do have a favorite bee. Well, I have a couple of favorite bees. It's hard to pick a favorite, but I did my master's work on blueberries, and there's this mining bee, Andrena carolina, that is a specialist on blueberries, and it's adorable, and I love it. So I was always so happy to see it out in the field, in blueberry fields. So that's my favorite, just because I got so familiar with that particular system. But there's lots of other really cool bees out there.
Lots of other cool, really cool insects and invertebrates too. I'm gonna have to look up a couple of the ones you mentioned. The bees flying on moonless or nearly moonless nights, definitely. All right, back to some home gardens. Irene says that they planted some onion and chive in their butterfly garden to discourage certain butterfly predators, and they are thriving. Who or what likes to pollinate onion and chive?
So I've definitely seen both bees and moths listed as pollinators of allium species, the onions and chives. So I think they're visited by a number of different kinds of insects. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have both daytime and nighttime pollinators of those.
Thanks. All right. Going back to pesticide and herbicide use, how can we collectively reduce pesticide and herbicide use to reduce invasive species plants?
To reduce invasive species of plants. Oh, I see. Okay. So I think this is probably more specific to herbicide use than if this is for invasive plant
Yeah.
management. I think in general, we want to be moving away from broadcast applications of herbicides. Sometimes that's what's being done, you know, by utility companies and rights of way, because they need to come through on a 5-year basis and keep woody species from reaching their, you know, their lines. But when we are managing, populations of invasive plants, hopefully we're able to move to more targeted use. For the species that are able to be managed mechanically, going towards mechanical management rather than chemical management of those plants. Things like garlic mustard would be an example of a plant that can be very easily managed. I mean, it does come in, in large amounts, but it's so easily pulled out of the ground. So if you get to it when it's flowering, targeting it when it's flowering and before it sets seed, it's so easy to just pull out. There are other species that are super challenging to manage without herbicides. An example would be Japanese knotweed, which is present in the Pacific Northwest and in the Northeast. And it just cutting makes it grow more vigorously. So mechanical management is pretty ineffective over time without chemical intervention. So in that case, it's really just focusing on getting the timing right. So not applying herbicide to plants that are in flower, and using the least amount possible. So in the case of knotweed, something like a stem injection is going to be a lot less chemical that's getting onto other plants, potentially affecting other invertebrates and plants, rather than a broadcast application. But generally speaking, just knowing the plant's life cycle, targeting management when it's going to be most effective, and using mechanical and cultural methods whenever possible.
Yeah. Speaking of other methods on the insecticide is permethrin clothing. That seems to be all the rage against ticks, also causing harm to other insects. Someone in the chat here has read that it's harming birds. So how could it not also harm other insects?
Oh, interesting. So I think it's possible that, so permethrin is used in different ways. Permethrin is one of the chemicals that are applied, as a granular treatment. It's also applied as a spray treatment for mosquitoes and ticks. So when it is being used outdoors, it can be very harmful to non-target wildlife like birds and insects. When it's infused into clothing, that's less the case. So I personally use permethrin infused clothing because I actually just had a deer tick that I had to use doxycycline for last week because we have them in our yard. So that's what I use to garden because I think it has much less off-target impact than applying something outdoors where it could affect insects. But it binds pretty tightly to your clothing. So I think the main thing to be concerned about would be if it ends up in, after laundering in your water. But I haven't actually looked into that, so I'm not sure. Just speaking off the cuff, as I tend to do.
Perhaps some more research.
Yeah, but I from everything that I read ahead of purchasing that clothing, it binds pretty tightly to the fabric. And so it's not ending up on your plants or in your soil or in the other ways that a barrier treatment would.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. All right. Martin wants to know if there are examples of neighborhood initiatives to reduce lights to use as a model for local initiatives. While we keep our native plant yard dark, the neighborhood is lit up. And I'm sure a lot of people feel similarly about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would look at Dark Sky International that has local chapters that are community-based for reducing light pollution. They have lots of resources on how you can advocate for that at the community level. And then also look at Lights Out Connecticut. I think you might have posted in the chat the toolkit for advocacy from Lights Out Connecticut, which is an Audubon project. And they had resources they developed for arguing for the legislation that ultimately passed in Connecticut to reduce lighting overnight and state-owned buildings.
Thanks for that. Yeah, well, if those aren't posted into the chat, we'll make sure that we include all these links mentioned when the video goes onto YouTube. All right. Speaking of videos, is there a good film available online or maybe elsewhere if you're aware of it to watch night pollinators in action?
That's a great question. I bet there is, but I haven't gone looking for it. One of the things I would really like to see, and maybe it's on YouTube, is that kind of buzz pollination type behavior from moths that I know that was captured by those researchers in Arkansas. So if anybody finds that video online and wants to send it to me, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'll definitely do a little research for that myself. But please feel free to post in the chat if anyone knows where that is. All right. Just going through a couple more questions here. There's lots of good discussions going on, and everyone seems really interested in sharing good information about pesticides and different strategies. So appreciate that. Then, all right. I think, do you have any comments to make, or are you familiar with an article or a research paper concerning nocturnal pollination on brambles or apples in order to improve the methodology? Are you familiar with that?
Oh, so to make on those particular articles, I
Yeah.
guess. I think, oh, I don't have any particular criticism of those. If anything, I just have kudos to those researchers for doing that work. In terms of the apple and the bramble pollination studies, they both used exclusion netting to look at how much those pollinators were contributing. So they had some that were, bagged. Exclusion netting, sometimes I say words and I realize that they're not words that everybody knows. Exclusion netting is basically like a mesh bag that gets put over flowers. So imagine like a sort of a fine mesh that's meant to keep pollinators out, but also let light in. So it's what we would use to study pollination in something like blueberries, which is what I did for my master's work. So for those apple and bramble pollination papers, they used that mesh netting over different flower clusters and then they opened some of them up at night and they opened other ones up during the daytime. And they looked at, well, how many fruit did those flowers set? And they found that there was, important pollination was happening in both parts of the day, and actually were in many cases equivalent amounts of pollination happening at night and during the day. And then they were able to look at how much pollen, at least in the case of the apple paper, how much pollen was being deposited on every individual by every individual visitor, finding that nighttime pollinators were depositing more pollen per visit than your average daytime visitor. So I don't have any particular criticism. I love that methodology. I think you learn a lot from doing that kind of exclusion netting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, but I know there's a lot of folks right now looking at, well, how can we improve the types of technologies like camera traps, like time-lapse photography that could help us capture some of these things without us having to be there monitoring the study, or, how could we use, is there a good use for artificial intelligence in actually, going through all of those hours of video footage or audio footage of pollinators moving around to try and capture how much visitation is happening at night.
Yeah, your comment earlier on about researchers staying up at night or rising early, definitely I would relate to.
It's
Finding
not
that a
an
little
easy
difficult
sell for a 21-year-old.
Exactly. Okay. All right, just a couple more questions here. I'm using palm olive soap to keep away mice. Do you know if it could be hurting or driving away pollinators?
So I think it's a tough question. I think in general, my advice is trying to avoid those types of home remedies in the garden, if just because sometimes things that are safe for us aren't safe for other things. So trying to use things that are really labeled or intended for that purpose. The exception would be things like more of the natural oil repellents and essential oils, where generally their effects are similar for pollinators as they are for other wildlife. So they repel pollinators. They're less toxic to them in general. There's some evidence of toxicity of like clove oil to insect larvae, and some other essential oils to the larvae of insects. But in general, at the rates people are applying them, they're more just of a repellent. So more being aware of, for soap, that would be something where you wouldn't want to apply it directly, on a caterpillar host plant, for example. Soap works as a smothering agent. So if you, similarly, if you were like spraying soapy water on a plant to knock off bugs or aphids or something like that, you wouldn't want to be doing that on a plant that's hosting your native caterpillars, because it would also smother out your native caterpillars. So I think just being in general cautious about home remedies is a good idea. The vinegar, Epsom salt dish soap recipe that I see often in home gardening forums is something that can be toxic to, soil insects. So something it might be appropriate for like sidewalk weeds, but maybe not for something that you're using over a place where ground nesting bees might be nesting.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, just time for like one, maybe two more. Seeing a couple more questions coming in right at the end, so
Oh,
apologies
now
that
I
we.
see the palm olive goes on the soil in shavings. Oh, that seems somewhat less harmful, although I guess it would probably eventually, break down and move into the soil.
Mhm, mhm.
So wouldn't necessarily want to use it right over where a bee might be nesting, and there might be mouse traps or some other method for controlling the mice.
Maybe. All right. I think we have time for one more question. We have a question from Barbara who says, I used to be a beekeeper. I saw bumblebees chasing away our honeybees from blueberry plants. Knowing that this happens makes me curious about other pollinators shifting to night visits. Do you know about other examples of this happening?
So yeah, I think not on like the time scale of an individual insect shifting from daytime to nighttime, but over really long evolutionary time spans, that's exactly what happens, right? There's competition for resources, and insects would be trying to find their niche within this full 24-hour cycle of when plants might be offering resources. So maybe over time they shifted from being day active to being night active because either resources were more accessible to them, there was less competition, or there was less predation from other insects or from other birds, that kind of thing. So that's definitely what happens on the longer time frame. Is when there's competition, it drives, selective pressure and all of that. And that's how evolution happens. On the really short time frame of like individual insects, I just wanted to mention, because you brought up that point about bumblebees chasing off honeybees, there's actually really cool papers and evidence showing that having a diversity of pollinators active is really important for that kind of movement and interaction. So like in almonds, for example, when you have a lot of wild bees and honeybees together, they make each other move more. So, you'll see them interact on a flower and one will come in and scare the other one off, and then it buzzes off. And that's actually really great for pollination because they visited that one flower, and instead of just hanging out there forever, they're buzzing off and maybe visiting a different row or a different part of the field or a different part of the plant. So having more pollinators and more diverse pollinators is great for getting those important interactions that then pollinate the plants in general.
Yeah, didn't think about that, but that makes sense. That's really interesting. Okay, one more. Really quickly, are there any night flying invertebrates that act as predators the way that dragonflies and wasps and robber flies do in the day?
Yes, there are definitely night active predators. I'm gonna have a total mind blank on who they are, but there are night active predators for sure. And one of the things that comes to mind is actually a vertebrate predator. Bats are major invertebrate predators. Predators of invertebrates at night.
Yes.
So, a classic kind of evolutionary example of an adaptation that an insect has is, the beautiful Luna moth that's active at night. It has those tails, long tails, that actually flap around and cause bats to be confused. So they are a bat deterrent strategy by the moth. That's how those tails flap around and they disrupt the bat's ability to echolocate effectively on the Luna moth. There's other examples too of lots of different insects have adaptations specifically to avoid or deter bats from preying on them.
Wow, that one's really interesting. That's new to me. I didn't know that's what the tails on the lint moths did. All right, well, would love to get to more of your questions. Hope we tried to cover a broad range of them, but I think we have to call it here. I don't know if Carly or Emily, either of you have any other thoughts or last questions yourselves.
I just want to thank Emily so much. You're getting lots of kudos in the chat and in the questions as well. That was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much for being with us today. And just want to remind folks that a little evaluation is going to pop up when you leave. We really appreciate if you take just a moment to fill that out. And this is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Xerces Society within a week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I always love talking about this. This is like my little pet topic that I'm so interested in. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, we appreciate it too.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.